weird ritual is right now taking place with Ripple and the SEC. And it's all eyes on this case, guys. Pay very close attention. And on this channel, we speak the truth and only the truth. I'm going to expose what I think is happening here with the case, because major announcement today. Okay, before I want to preface, the one prosecuted first gets approved first. New market research from Kaiko says spot XRP ETFs are likely to get approved in the United States before others. That's a little bit strange. You know why? Because if the market bottoms soon and the Federal Reserve starts QE again, and all this liquidity is injected into the markets, what's going to happen? Every stock in crypto will pump dramatically. That's so weird, because XRP is going to be the first cryptocurrency, first digital asset that opens its pathways for money to easily flow in when all the external events happen, guys. Why? Because the spot ETFs for XRP are going to get approved first. That's really interesting. Okay, so remember, ETFs for XRP approved first soon. Now, this is where it gets more weird, because then it ties into the case concluding. Yeah, baby, almost there. SEC versus Ripple. So the parties' joint motion to hold the appeal in abeyance has been granted. The SEC is directed to file a status report within 60 days of this order. Now, listen very carefully, and this is where it gets weird, okay? And nobody else will point this out, guys. Please like today's video. Thank you. First things first. 60 days again? I thought it was 60 days from whatever it was 3 weeks ago, right? This literally never ends. Now this is odd. So people are asking, how does this case keep getting delayed? It doesn't make sense, right? When all these other cases for the other crypto companies and fintech companies, guys, are getting dropped like flies. So how is it Ripple is the only case that they keep prolonging? Something doesn't add up. But it does. Why? Anyone else feel like they're waiting for some type of geopolitical or economic event to happen before they end this case? Or is it just me? But we called it back in 2021. We called it back then that this case will end when there's an external event that brings everything down. Listen very carefully, and this is where it gets weird, okay? Now we're about to connect the dots, because we were the first people on this channel. I know if you guys were watching from back then, you remember us saying this. The case will probably end around the same time as the collapse. So, the past proves the future, and the future proves the past. Why? XRP bottomed on June 18th, 2022. It was the Pico bottom. Why is that strange, you may ask? Because, going back here, 60 days again takes us to June 15th. That's odd. Wait a minute. So the deadline is by June 15th. But back a few years back, XRP bottomed June 18th. That's odd, isn't it? But then it gets even more strange. Coming back here, guys, look at this. If there is an external event, by the way, right, it's going to repeat what it did back then. Look what happened to XRP. This was April, okay? It dumped. And then they pumped. And what came up next for the next 2 months until the bottom appeared? Dump after dump after dump. What's happening now? April began here. It dumped. Then it pumped. If we follow the same trajectory, okay, actually going to take a bar pattern right here, guys. I'm not saying this is going to happen. This will only happen due to a big black swan event, an explosive black swan event, guys. But again, it matches up. If they conclude this case with some type of black swan event happening at the same time, then we were right from years ago, okay? Because that's what we stated. So if we take a fractal of that, let's see if it's repeating. It looks like it's repeating to me, doesn't it, guys? Right? That's how it will look like. So that's a little bit odd, right? If it does follow this trajectory, which I'm honestly thinking there will be a bigger black swan coming soon, guys, right? But again, this is just his theory, because how is it that the deadline is by June 15th, right? 6 days from now takes us to around the previous bear market bottom for XRP years ago. Do you guys see what I'm talking about? Right? So are they about to repeat history? Yeah, I mean, this is odd. If one were to look at history between the SEC and Ripple case, it would be more than fair to say that in 55 days, SEC will ask for another continuance, unless that new SEC chair, Paul Atkins, directs otherwise. But we were the first to say it. The case will end when there is uncertainty, and a lot of it. We were saying more than not during the collapse or around it. That's odd though. Cryptos and stocks bottom out June 18th to July 15th. I'm honestly thinking the next bottom will be around that date, right? Even though this was stated back in 2022, but it's weird to me because the deadline is by June 15th. So let me add in to what the Federal Reserve has stated. Maybe it connects somehow. From Zero Hedge, Powell asked if the Fed will intervene if the stock market plummets. Powell says no with an exclamation. Stock market plummets, right? So the Federal Reserve doesn't care. They actually want the markets to go down in order to restart quantitative easing, right? In order to print so much liquidity so everything rises 100x where it's at right now. And here's the video, guys. Again, this matches up with our theory though, right? If a dump happens to a large degree, the Federal Reserve will finally step in because inflation went down, and it'll all happen due to a black swan event, right? So let's pay attention to see this.
Seen some volatility, especially stock market volatility. I mean, the levels of the VIX are up to the levels they were in the early days of the pandemic, coming off somewhat now. Some people believe the Fed will intervene if the stock market plummets, the so-called Fed put. Are they correct?
I'm going to say no with an explanation.
So if the stock market plummets, right, he doesn't want to bail out the market, guys. But again, yes, he will. You know why? Because the black swan event. Inflation is a problem. They want inflation to go down. Inflation is about to become deflation, right? Deflationary, because everything will go down, guys. It all depends on the black swan events, and I'm guessing it ties into the certain countries, right? Having animosity against each other. And then the Federal Reserve will be like, finally, it's all set in stone. This is odd. We'll see though. We'll see what happens. They'll obviously intervene. Obviously, for now they won't, because the markets didn't even dump that much. Look at XRP. Look where it's at, right? Barely. Look how much more it could fall down. When XRP does probably fall with Bitcoin heavy, and stocks, then they'll come in. Right now he's saying no, but he will. Because there isn't a huge black swan event. That's the issue. When that appears, everything will have the green light.
So what I think is going on in markets is markets are processing what's going on, and it's really the policies, particularly the trade policy, and really the question is, where's that going to come in? Where's that going to land? And we don't know that yet. And until we know that, you can't really make informed assessments that would still be highly uncertain. Once you know what the policies are, it'll still be highly uncertain what the economic effects will be. So markets are struggling with a lot of uncertainty, and that means volatility. But having said that, markets are functioning. Conditional on being in such a challenging situation, markets are doing what they're supposed to do. They're orderly, and they're functioning just about as you would expect them to function.
I feel like we hit we cracked the code, guys. Right? And another weird thing here is the 60-day SEC window aligns with the Fed's delay for June. Right? So what's happening with... Okay, so President Trump wants Papa Powell to implement rate cuts first. Only then is he going to allow the SEC to end XRP lawsuit. So when will the Fed cut rates again? When the black swan appears. Right? Nothing to do with it. They're bringing on a recession so they can start QE. Prices will crash another 50%. At least many will fail. That's what I'm thinking. Right? I'm thinking that it's all a ritual, guys. And it's odd because if they bottom out cryptos again during the timeline that I gave, during the period, right? It's just one big joke. This market is. So with this order, the next move we'll see is a filing in the district court seeking to modify Judge Torres' order, i.e. lifting the injunction and reducing the fine. That's the game plan, it seems. On April 16th, 2025, the United States Courts of Appeals granted the joint request from the SEC and Ripple to pause their legal appeals. This means the case is temporarily on hold while both sides work toward finalizing a settlement agreement. The SEC is required to provide a formal update to the case within 60 days of the order, which lands on June 16th, 2025. This pause allows time for the SEC internal approvals process and avoids further court filings in the meantime. Coming down here, this is 6 days after the Apex XRPL conference, 5 days after the G20 private sector roundtable, right? And the same day that Clearstream adopts ISO 20022 standards. In my honest opinion, it's all coming together beautifully, right? And XRP is very strong right now. You know why? Why is it strong? Because XRP is above these certain lines, okay? But with Bitcoin, it's not. But listen, I think the reason why they pumped XRP this heavy is because when it does fall, like it is doing right now, it gets protected. Okay? The price becomes protected or something like that, guys. Because if they didn't pump the price and XRP just went up like that, yeah, I mean, it was gonna literally die. Right? It's like some type of price protection happening right now. That's odd. Right? And here are the weekly moving averages for XRP. Right? I think when it bottoms, the moving averages will have some type of cross, right, to trick everyone, and then we're going to pump. Or they may not even cross. It may become like this, guys, tight like that, right? And it may bounce like that in the coming months. So that's just my theory and opinions of what I think will happen to price, and especially these certain events, right, with the case and stuff like that. So we'll see. I think honestly it's all coming together beautifully. Not financial advice. What is so face amazing? See ya.